it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? Alright, the motion carries. Alright, so now we will move to public comment. Before I move to public comment, I would just like to remind everyone to please only speak when you've been recognized by the chair. Or if there is a question that we ask you directly, then we might ask you to come up here and speak or to stand up where you are and speak, but please don't speak out of turn, so only when you've been recognized by the chair, okay? So I will start with public comment. Each person will have 5 minutes and I will time you and I will cut you off after 5 minutes, okay? So can I have Dylan, is it Barrett? You can just come and sit right there.
Hi, my name is Dylan Barrett. I'm a sophomore in high school and I attend a small school in the state of Iowa by my own choice. Due to the fact that our high school was forced to close, I had no other choice but to attend a much larger school last year. I was used to the small school atmosphere by attending Hamburg K-8. Last year, I was forced to change to a much larger school. Why can't it be about the kids and what is truly best for them? Some kids thrive in large environments, yet others don't. Why do we have to push all kids into attending large schools when some feel more comfortable in smaller family-like environments? Why do we continue to try to make them all fit into the same mold? You have created the open enrollment option. If a student wants to go to a larger, more traditional school, they would have that option. Some kids thrive in more hands-on environments, but by taking away our smaller schools, you are taking away that option. I'm a perfect example for both. I prefer a small hands-on environment. That is what works best for me. In the smaller school, I have learned many lessons that I feel will help me become an active member of my community. I have learned how to solve problems. I have learned how to work with other people and be more accepting of who they are. I have learned that if something doesn't work right the first time, you take it apart and start again. I have learned the value of hard work and how to reach down and help others when they struggle. I've learned how to give to others, and that it's our responsibility to take care of each other. I've learned that if I have extra, you need to share with others who don't. I feel that attending a smaller hands-on school has given me these experiences. I believe these opportunities will help me to become a helping, caring, contributing member of my community. Isn't that the purpose of education? I know you think bigger is better, but not everyone does. Look at all the bedroom communities on the outskirts of your larger cities. People move to these areas because they want a smaller hometown feeling. My dad drove 55 miles one way to work every day for 20 years so that his children could grow up in a small, loving environment. He had opportunities to move to a larger city, but chose to live in a smaller community for his family. Bigger isn't always better. Thank you.
Thank you.
And now we have Earl Henderson.
My name's Earl Henderson. I don't have a prepared speech, but I thought I'd come and try to convince some of you that Hamburg is a growing town. I'm on the city council there, I'm a member. I know that we've been flooded out and we've got some uphill grinds to go, but we've worked very close with the governor, and she has got her back and really helped us a bunch to get Hamburg growing again. I know one of the threats is the flood. The Corps threatened to flood us again, but I've got a nephew that's spearheading the work on those levees out there on the Missouri River from Thurman all the way down to Ashland County. And he's assured me that within a couple of weeks, all those breaches will be closed. So we're going to be protected from the Missouri River this coming year. And we'll see crops growing out there on the bottom that was under 10 foot of water last year. So we've got a lot of things going in Hamburg. We're regarding new housing projects. Just yesterday, a contractor come in and was gonna build 2 spec homes. We've got land that we're gonna purchase we've got a contract going for 10 acres just north of our grade school that we're gonna build a new housing project. I think new homes is going to make a big difference in our town to draw people back. Hamburg has got probably half the industry in Fremont County. Since this flood, all of our industry has stuck with us because we are gonna build a levee around the south end of Hamburg. And again, give us more protection from the Missouri River. And that's gonna happen this year. So I'm proud of the industry for sticking with us because they went through a lot of pain and suffering and lost a lot of money during this flood. But they believe in us, the governor believes in us. Another big thing we got going in Hamburg, we're building a brand new hotel. We lost our motel. We're building a new 24-unit hotel right on Main Street. With the new housing going on, we're trying to rehab some housing to get people back in Hamburg, and that's a big part of it. And saving our school is one of the big spokes in the wheel to saving our town. So we got a lot of dedicated people that's working hard and have worked hard for this past year, and it's soon gonna be a year since the flood hit on St. Patrick's Day last year. We got a long ways to go, but I'm positive that we're gonna get there. And Hamburg's gonna be bigger and better than it was before. So I thank you for your time. I appreciate whatever decision you make.
Can you share what the industry is? I was in Hamburg on Tuesday. Tell me what the industry is you're talking about.
Okay, we have 2 big implement dealers, and I think John Deere is probably one of the biggest in the country, Agrivision. The other one is a case dealer. We have 2 large elevators owned by Bartlett. One used to be Cargill, and Bartlett bought them out. The other industry is Manildra, which produces what do they produce, John? Glue. They produce glue, and they're one of the industries that, you know, they employ about 50 people. And they lost a lot of money during this flood, and they had stuck with us because we told them we're gonna build this levee back around Hamburg that the Corps of Engineers made us tear down after the 211 flood. That levee that was built in 211 held the water out of Hamburg for 3 months. And for some reason, because it was put up in an emergency situation, the Corps says you have to take it down. So we took it down, and now you know what's happened. So they've got a lot of negative feedback from our legislators, and we've had a lot of pressure put on them, and I think if they start managing the dams the way they're supposed to be managed for flood control, we'll never have another problem like that in Hamburg. The other industry we have is ConAgra, which is a large popcorn plant that produces microwave popcorn.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Brooke. As the board knows, a note was sent to us concerning the issue before us today. In that note was written, and I quote, "Is it a coincidence that he," and the he is a reference to me, "is a great family friend and taught at Iowa Western with Hamburg, Essex business manager Bill Barrett," end quote. My goal is to ensure that all students in Iowa receive the quality education they are entitled to. I am also cognizant of the importance of a school to a community. I retired from full-time employment at Iowa Western in 2002 and continued part-time for the next 4 to 6 years. Bill and I worked in different departments, I in the social science department. To the best of my recollection, I had not seen Bill since until last January, following the vote on the request by Hamburg to reinstate their high school. After the vote, during a recess in the board meeting, Bill approached me and introduced himself to me again, and we chatted briefly. Only later did I discover that he was the business manager at Hamburg. Bill has never spoken to me about this issue. I don't even recall meeting his wife or other family members. Because of these facts, I will make a decision on this issue based on the information provided to this board, with my focus of my decision being on what I believe is best for the students of Hamburg. Thank you.
So now Hamburg. Right?
There was more public comment, there were two more.
Oh, sorry. There was- Sorry, my bad. Can I go back to
Yeah,
public
we'll go
comment?
back to public
Okay.
comment.
Sorry, they were underneath my binder. All right. Alex.
Jacobson.
Jacobson.
Hi, my name is Alex Jacobson. I was born in Soviet Union, and I immigrated approximately 7 years ago. I really enjoy to see these young folks who is come to come and to protect their rights. Unfortunately, my kids didn't believe they can protect their kids, so I come to advocate them. Can you please do this? I come to here to get safety environment and equal opportunity to my kids. And my kids also was diagnosed, I have 3 kids diagnosed with ADHD. So like an immigrant and kids who have disadvantages, I need to work hard to provide education to my kids. And I'm really proud of achievements what did my oldest son. In age 15, he was passed ACT with score 35. He was qualified for national triathlon. Later, he getting number 30. In age 16, he finished the school. In age 19, he finished ISU college engineering, and he has many other achievements. However, paper you have on your table, it's only one recommendation letter get for him few months ago, 3.5 months later than he finished the school, and half months later than he finished engineering college in ISU. So it's prevent a lot of opportunities to him on the education, and of course a lot of money we lost because we didn't get any some scholarships. Unfortunately, with my middle boy situation getting worse, in age 34, because I knew it could be issue, it's not be appreciation, I asked him to make ACT. In age 14, he get 34, 36 on science, 36 on reading. However, and he have 5-4 plan, I asked to Bill to protect his disability. However, even he get 36 on reading at his college, top college entrance score, he get D on English. And some other, I believe I can call it discrimination issue going on and on. Like from 2018, he has like only small requirement, provide extra time for his final test. Just a few weeks ago, I found his general score was, again on English, was taken down because he late just for 2 minutes. And unfortunately, it's not the worst situation, because when I come and ask the school district to follow the 504 regulation, and I ask to follow Iowa Code 22 on public information request, multi times PD, the same officer, include my house and threat me and my child, and told if you continue to ask questions, if you continue to bother schoolwork, not only you, but also your child be in trouble. So it's bringing me a lot of bad memories, because like I told, I was born in ISU in USSR, 80% of my family during World War II and during Cold War was killed or sent to the camps, I can call it. So it's take away me feeling I come to a place who promise keep the law, keep freedom. Because right now I don't see much freedom and I don't see much law, but I see abusive local government behavior. So I come to here and I connected more than 2 years ago with you, Mr. Weiss, and with your department. I tried to communicate with you. I failed. I don't know why. So I come to here not just to impress my experience, but just I want to answer. I want protection. So I finish right now, but I can't continue this way because I need to protect my family. I need to protect my and I believe like a citizen I should protect the law what it doesn't follow the local government. Thank you.
All right, Devin, address?
Kim Ashlock. Did I put my name in the wrong spot?
It's
Oh.
Kim, yeah, come on up.
Sorry.
There isn't also a Kim address, is there?
Okay.
All right, Kim.
Thank you. I feel like I should come up here and do a cheer. I was a Wildcat cheerleader back in the day. Thank you for allowing me to comment. My name is Kim Ashlock, and I want to speak not only to Dr. Wells' character and the type of person that he is, but also my experiences. So I'm going to go back to when I was a Hamburg graduate. I received my teaching degree because of my first grade teacher, Mrs. Mayberry, that I had in Hamburg. But my family made the decision to move to Nebraska City from Hamburg when I got that teaching degree because we knew that Iowa was slowly closing all of our small schools and we didn't want our kids to be bussed all over at the time we had our son. So I took a teaching job in Nebraska City in 2004, but in 2018 we had the amazing opportunity to move into our family farm and help take care of our grandparents. We jumped at the chance. After months of discussion, we decided to enroll our kids in Sydney because of the lack of a high school in Hamburg. Our son has struggled in school with anxiety and ADD, so we didn't want him in one school as a 7th grader and then moved as a 9th grader. His counselor agreed this was the best decision, even though it was the hardest one for our family, me as a graduate of Hamburg. Now I want to be clear, I'm only speaking in regards to this experience because Sydney schools has seemed to be a topic of discussion in regards to our issue in Hamburg. I want to make sure you realize they have double numbers that we have, and they have had since my childhood. And our few kids should not make a huge impact on them financially. They should be able to sustain that on their own. We simply had a friendship with Sydney because we were getting our finances in order in Hamburg. It was not a marriage. We did not commit to them long term. They knew that this was what we were working and striving for. Here's my experience. My son started up there. I spent much time calling, emailing, meeting with staff even before school started, and they refused to recognize his issues as anything more than regular teenage issues, even when I gave documents of his testing. I begged them to help him, as he has no problem to anyone else. He doesn't have hyperactivity. He just needs a little extra assistance. He failed every core class that first semester. They benched him at over half of his basketball games, making the anxiety worse. Everything I asked them to do, they did the opposite, and they let him fall through the cracks. And previously, he was in Nebraska City, a very large school, and he was doing well there. I met with Dr. Wells at Christmas, and I had my kids tour Hamburg. My kids begged me to transfer them right away. They felt so comfortable there, and they loved all the hands-on learning. Dr. Wells continued to say to my husband and I, "Thank you for allowing us to educate your kids." As a teacher, that I was appalled. I'd never met a superintendent that was so hands-on with his students. I felt 100% safe sending my kids there. I quickly found out Dr. Wells isn't just a superintendent that sits behind a desk and crunches numbers, focusing all of his energy on state requirements. He coaches when needed, fixes things, knows the names of nearly every student in the school as well as their family situation. He not only welcomed our kids to his school, he welcomed our whole family. 3 months later, we had to evacuate our family farm and move to town with my mom to try to get through this. It was hard on all of us, yet the school was the meeting place, the safe house, the donation center for the entire town. In the mornings, you would find my grandpa's generation drinking coffee in the lunchroom while students were in class. The kids would want to stay even after school hours. You see, Hamburg isn't just our school, it's the heart of our town. Dr. Wells just isn't a number-crunching administration. He was right beside those kids during the worst period of their life, pulling people out of flooded homes, sandbagging, hugging parents, helping them find housing, beds, assistance. I could go on and on. And while opening the school doors for community meals, the donation center, it was incredible. We could have easily moved back to Nebraska City where my husband works, but we lived in a basement for 205 days until we could get ourselves together and buy a home in Hamburg. We stayed because of the school. Our plan at that point was to homeschool our kids after 8th grade. A no vote today means you agree with the state's push to big business schools. Seeing kids is only data on a couple tests. You are agreeing to shoving as many kids in a classroom as you can and producing kids that can excel on tests but struggle to be strong citizens in their community. You agree to kids being bussed all over and put into a learning environment that's not a family school environment like Hamburg. A yes vote today says yes to Dr. Wells and his vision to educate the whole child. From hands-on learning to field trips, as a teacher, it's huge when he says you can go on a field trip. I also am a teacher in Essex now for him. And it's been a support that I can't even fathom compared to what I had in Nebraska City. He's trying to foster more than just the academic child. He does that too, but the productive citizen and community member. Yes, his ideas scare many people, my grandpa included, because he's such a forward, optimistic thinker. We need a grocery store in town, so he has plans to make that happen with the students working in it. I'm asking you to say yes to our small town, rural education, where kids use their academic skills for more than just paper pencil. Hamburg students can apply knowledge in the real world. They know how to take care of animals, helping them learn compassion and empathy for each other as well. They're building a house for a flood family, teaching them to give back and work with their hands. Please vote yes today and allow our town to continue to rebuild. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think, everyone that submitted a card or you heard, we just want to make sure we didn't lose any cards in the entrance of everyone. Okay, so we can move to Hamburg.
I guess I would request, my response is to the state's report. And I don't know if it's going to make sense unless they present before me.
The board has received the report, and so the board members have all read the report in advance and knew that Hamburg was up first, so.
Okay. Thank you. First of all, thank you for taking the time to hear from us again. I know you guys are from all over the state, and to take another day says a lot about you. So no matter how it goes, we appreciate that. Second, I would really like to thank Mike. He traveled over 200 miles this week to come and see our school firsthand. And if he votes no, I can live with that. But you can see firsthand what our kids are doing. And the feeling when you're in the building is like nowhere you've been. So I appreciate you taking that time and doing that. So my response, we've already presented to you one. I'm not going through the whole spiel. Our plan is to share teachers with Essex. We have a fully certified staff. The plan is a plan that helps both Hamburg and Essex, two very small schools in Iowa. The second part of the plan is to have a career academy. There are no true career academies in Southwest Iowa. That is exactly the governor's push in her plan. She wants to see kids who can get training, technical training, while they're still in school, and our plan does that. So my response is really going to be to the report. I appreciate the Department of Education's effort. I have a great deal of respect for everyone. I'm friends with all of them. So if my comments come off as snarky, I apologize. But if you're going to make your decision based on this, I want to make sure the information is accurate. And that's my intent. So I apologize in front if I say anything that's touchy. And I'm just going to go through, you have the report. Page 6 talks about the feasibility studies. In 1989 to current time, we went through 5 feasibility studies. as all of Southwest Iowa. You know how many recommendations were taken from those? Almost none. From any school that was there. We're very independent down that part of the state. Hamburg did join with Farragut. And Farragut dissolved because financially they couldn't make it. Hamburg was right on the brink of dissolving. At that time, when Farragut dissolved, those kids had a choice of going to Sydney, which most of the kids did. And some kids went to Shenandoah. At that time, Sydney had to get portable buildings because their school was not large enough. So the idea that Sydney had extra expenses just for Hamburg kids isn't quite correct. So we wanted to make sure that's known. The second piece is, when the dissolution of Farragut happened, I met with Jeff Berger, and I believe Amy Williamson was also at that meeting, because we talked about how will this land be divided. Almost all the kids that live in Farragut attended Hamburg schools, almost all of them, because we had a consolidation with them. And at that time we were told, when we divide this land, we're going to divide it up with the kids' best interest. So if 95% of the kids are going to Hamburg, we're going to take that into consideration. And the division should have been, all three schools should have been able to get into Farragut. All three schools should have been able to get into Riverton, and let the families choose where they go. When the deed drew those borders, they put us 3 miles south of Farragut, out in the cornfield. That was our division. So I feel, and our district feels, even from the beginning of this, we were put at a disadvantage. We have kids that come in from Farragut, and they have to drive out in the middle of the country and drop kids off for us to pick them up. In Riverton, they have to drive 2 miles to the east and drop kids off, or to the west. So there's a long history with the DE in Hamburg. And I'm not saying those people, Jeff Berger's a good man, Amy is, I love Amy. But right away, those divisions were not fair. And so we had our back against the wall to begin with. On page 7 of your report, it talks about non-compliance for Hamburg. From 2010 to 2015, Hamburg had non-compliance issues. And we're not denying that. They had a ton of financial problems. Beginning from 2015 to today, those problems are gone. We're not having, we may occasionally get, we don't have one of the words in our discrimination policy not on our website, but we have no major non-compliance issues. And financially, Hamburg is in the best position it's ever been in. We're well over $1 million, we're over $1 million unspent balance. And we need people to understand that. In the report, just because my public is confused, also on page 7, it talks about the 2017 Certificate of Need. That has nothing to do with academics. A Certificate of Need deals with buildings. So if you're under 250 kids in Iowa, you have to fill out this 35, 40-page application to spend penny sales tax money to do additions to your building. Okay, and we've done that twice because we wanted our building up to speed, handicap accessible, safe and secure for our families. That has nothing to do with academics, and we want to make sure people understand that. Paragraph 9 on page 7, reference to Iowa Community College. Several times in the report, it says, well, you don't have any contracts in place with Iowa Western for career academies. We cannot enter into contracts till we have a high school. We can't sign anything, and so that's the only reason. We've met with Iowa Western. They're going to be great partners for us. Page 10, we talk about enrollment, the state does. And the statement was Iowa's growing, but this area of the state is not. All of Southwest Iowa has declining enrollment, all of it. Some schools in that area have more declining enrollment than Hamburg. The only reason our enrollment went down was because of the flood. We had grown the year before. So I put a chart on there just to show you Fremont Mills, on your projections, the state's projections, is going to be down 10% by 2023. Shenandoah is going to be down 4%. Red Oak down 7%. That's a trend of all rural of Iowa. And that is called urbanization. And our state's getting clobbered by it. Page 14 of your report talks about educational programs. Does our plan expand learning opportunities for kids? The state says no. There are no career academies in Southwest Iowa. Our argument is that all of these programs are new programs to Southwest Iowa. The construction trades, the nursing, the technology, These are all new programs. I don't know how we can make an argument that that isn't going to add curriculum, not only for Hamburg, but for the schools who join that. So we disagree with that respectfully. Page 15. We have an opportunity to create a different model for education. The legislative intent is to expand opportunity for kids. They've passed online learning. It's time for Iowa to move forward. Don't put so many barriers on schools to use those technologies. We're going to limit you to 2 online classes, or you got to have special permission. The legislators passed a law, allow those, and that's going to be a key not only to Hamburg schools, but to all rural schools. So we definitely will apply for a waiver at both Essex and Hamburg. There's no reason we wouldn't get that waiver and would anticipate that. The chart on page 15 shows a comparison of school districts. First of all, it's not complete. A full schedule hasn't been created. These are tentative at this point. Even with the limited data the DE has, there are areas Hamburg far exceeds the area schools. Look at the fine arts. In some cases, 3 times what some schools have. And in the career academies, not all those numbers are reflected with classes. Page 16, the big conversation is the career academies. It is true that the state and the AA can make life miserable for me. We have not signed contracts with Iowa Western, and legally can't do it until we get our high school. The state and the AA can be difficult because they can deny me. They can deny me those opportunities. I have to work through the AA to get those career academies approved. Do I anticipate that to be a problem? Absolutely not. Why would it be? As long as our teachers are qualified and meet Iowa Western standards, that shouldn't be an issue, and we don't anticipate that. But we want to make sure that, you know, they've made that statement in there that we haven't gone through the AEA to clear these. No, we have not. But I don't know any reason why that would be an issue. Page 17 deals with CTE areas, especially ag is listed. We've identified a farmer in Hamburg that has an ag degree. We would have to apply for an occupational teaching license. And if he's approved, we would have ag next year. But I cannot sit in front of you today and tell you that will happen. But that is our intent. And that person could be shared at Essex as well. We have been approved for welding through Iowa Western. We have a qualified teacher. We have been approved for the nursing. We have a qualified nurse. We have a culinary instructor that can teach culinary arts. So we feel that we're in a good place for February. We have a lot of work to do, but there's no reason we can't make those things happen. Page 18 deals with board policies. Those policies are all in place in Hamburg. They were never removed. They do need updated to meet new standards, but that's probably the easiest of our requirements, updating board policies. Page 19, the Iowa Department uses the Iowa School Performance Profile. And if, Ryan, if I speak, Dr. Weiss, if I speak and I'm wrong, please correct me. That is how we get scored or graded as a school. It deals with growth. Okay, my kids might score lower than Shenandoah kids, but if they have more than a year of growth, I'm going to score higher on that profile than the other schools. Okay, would that be correct?
Well, growth is the heaviest weighted factor, but that doesn't automatically mean your composite score would be higher. But you're correct in that the growth is the strongest factor within that.
Okay, thank you. Unfortunately, the DE didn't have time to look at that. Okay? The DE states in their board, we didn't have enough time to gather all this information. So I'm going to help them. If you go to the profiles and you click on the button Hamburg, those scores come up. And I put them on charts for you. Over in 2019 on the left is the elementary ratings according to the Iowa Department of Education, not me, that list all those. Essex is the top elementary school in southwest Iowa. Hamburg is okay, but they're in the bottom part. In 2018, they were the highest performing school in southwest Iowa in the elementary. If you look at the middle school, which isn't exactly an equal comparison because some schools have 7 through 12 as the listing, and some have just middle school. And we only have middle school. So Hamburg in Southwest Iowa, compared to our peers, have the highest profile in Southwest Iowa. And you see these other schools, Essex being second, which is another school that seems to be an issue here. And you can see where everyone else stacks up. Our kids do well. And those are reports not created by us. In page 20, we concur, absolutely, that Hamburg has to rely on Essex to make this work. It will not work without them. I have met with Essex staff. They're willing to do whatever it takes. For Essex, let's say we have 20 students in our high school. We generate $140,000. We cut them a check for $100,000 for teaching. It's a win for them. They have no new expenses except some travel. And for Hamburg, financially we can make it. We can be solvent with the high school. Over the next 4 years, that high school will grow. And we know that. Page 20 also, Essex, there was all kinds of information about Essex. And I just want to clarify the mistakes. Essex staff and leadership is stable. Rob Breck's been the principal there for a decade. Superintendents, we're like migrant workers. We come and we go. And that pattern probably will never change in small schools. There were 10 resignations last year in Essex. And the DE, the way I read the report was, oh my goodness, it's falling apart. No, the superintendent told all those staff members, you're not going to have a high school next year, you better go get a job. That's why 10 people left that district. They're extremely loyal. Extremely loyal. And they do not want to leave that school, and they don't want to lose it. Staff members were told to find another job. The community was not part of the conversation at Essex. And guess what? They weren't very happy when all of a sudden they come to a meeting and they're told there's high school's going to close. What happens? The community gets on board members. The board members resign and new people step up. There's nothing that has nothing to do with Hamburg or me, but the current board re-ran for election, were elected, and they were opposed, and we have a good board there. So it's a stable situation with Essex and Hamburg, and I'm the superintendent at both schools, and I can control schedules. Personnel sharing. FFA program with Red Oak. It was seemed like a big deal in the report. The reason no kids from Essex take FFA is because Red Oak is on an AB block, which is 90 minutes, and it's 30 minutes to get there and 30 minutes to get back to take one class. A kid would have to take half a day off to take one class. No kids take it, and I don't recommend any kids doing that. It's dumb. Essex shares a librarian with Hamburg. They have for years. Hamburg buys 9 days. Why? Because there's this silly requirement, you got to have a licensed librarian. And that's the only way the schools can do it. It has no impact on Essex. A PE and industrial art teachers are shared with South Page. Not true. We don't share physical education with South Page. We do share an industrial arts teacher. It is Essex's teacher. And we're at a disadvantage because we actually harm Essex kids in order to provide half a day with South Page. Will that continue? Probably not. Because we want our kids to have lots of options. Right now you have 3 classes of industrial arts, and you've got to have a kid in every one of those in order to meet CTE requirements. And so that probably won't happen. A title tag teacher is shared with South Page. That's not true. We don't share title or tag with South Page. A Spanish teacher is shared with Red Oak and Sydney. We don't share teachers with Sydney. And we just wanted to correct those. Page 20, states concerned about teacher licensure. You are correct in your report that I do not have a teaching endorsement in Iowa. I am also qualified to have a teaching endorsement in Iowa. I have a BA in history, a BA in physical education. I have a doctorate. I'm qualified to teach in Iowa. Have I filed for my paperwork? No. But I would do that. If I have to teach a history class, I'm happy to do that to make it work. So I wanted to make sure I'm qualified for that position. Essex and Hamburg, very small. Our staffs can work together. There's no question there. And I know I'm going to run out of time, so I'll try to pick it up here.
You have about 3 minutes left.
3 minutes? Are you going to hold me to that?
Yes.
Really?
Or else I get in trouble.
And we did publish the time, so.
Okay. I'll try to get to the meat of things then.
Closing argument time.
Page 21 and 22 of your report. This deals with, I respect Tim Hood. Sydney's been good. They have a great school. I'm not here to criticize anybody. I don't think that these other schools or the AEA should be part of the conversation to decide whether Hamburg has a school. That is unnecessary, it's unfair, and it pits school against school. Some comments I have to correct. The Green Hills AEA chief has been to my district. I believe it is 45 minutes in my district. Mike, who came this week, has had more time in my district than AEA chief. So any comments about our farm school or makerspace, they haven't looked at our curriculum. Those are, I don't know where that information comes from. Sydney schools. Sydney's, we already talked about, had portables. That had to do more with the fare dissolution than Hamburg. I mean, I could go on and on. I don't know if it'll do me any good. So my last and closing comments, we have a great opportunity in front of us today. It is a gamble. Every once in a while, you have to go with the underdog. We have proven, in 2015, the DE thought we were closing. Today, we are financially healthy. And if we're given the opportunity to have a high school, it will work. And you know what, if it doesn't, it's a dissolution. This isn't something our board's taken lightly. You will dissolve us if it doesn't, and you'll get what you want. They'll all go to Sydney and we're done. But we know we can make this work. This is key to our community recovery. Key. Without a high school, you will never recover the community. And again, I want to thank you for taking the time to let us talk. No matter what your decision, I appreciate that. Questions you have of me?
Thank you.
Do you want to do questions or do you want to go through and then?
I agree, but let's go on a little.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Sydney.
10 minutes.
Good morning. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Tim Hood. I'm the shared superintendent for the Sydney, South Page, and East Mills. Thank you to the Department of Ed for completing the Hamburg Community School District School Feasibility Study. We appreciate the time and effort, knowledge, and expertise that went into completing the information for consideration. To recognize that the State Board of Education's decision will have long-lasting effects on student learning and appreciate you looking at the big picture. First, I would like to go ahead and recognize the elephant in the room. Okay? Unfortunately, no matter what I say today, Hamburg residents who believe they can support a high school will take offense. However, my job as superintendent of Sydney Community School District is twofold. Number one is to keep Sydney as financially stable as possible, and two is to provide a quality education for all students in our care, both Hamburg and Sydney. I'm here today at my school board and community's request to ask the Board of Education not to allow Hamburg to operate a high school after almost 10 years of not having one. At the end of the day, it would be damaging to both Hamburg and Sydney's schools' finances, learning, and long-term viability. Neutral data I will be sharing in a few minutes shows the financial damage as soon as 3 years. One thing I would like to make clear, that we are sincerely sorry that Hamburg flooded last year. It's heart-wrenching, however, we are not sure how that flooding has been interpreted as Hamburg needing a high school again. If we think beyond our heartstrings, we see that the reality is the most recent flood only magnifies the original reasons Hamburg ceased to operate a high school. Decline in population and student enrollment, lack of long-term financial viability, and long history of non-compliance. In fact, lack of accreditation led Hamburg to share with Sydney, so those students come to us. We have done our best to be good neighbors for the sake of students for the last few years. Sydney taxpayers took on some financial burdens with adding some classrooms, hiring staff, and providing some technology. As shown in the feasibility study, there are 5 studies conducted since 1989. Those results were consistent in recommending that Hamburg and Sydney get something figured out. So this past Monday, we had a joint board meeting to discuss some of those things, potential for the future. Hamburg has been without a high school since 2011. The current students that we're talking about here really have never known Hamburg with a high school. These students have benefited from a level of stability and consistency that prior Hamburg students were denied. Also, evidenced in the feasibility studies offering teach requirements for Hamburg students are currently being met in Sydney. Our programs are already in place and properly endorsed. As you can see on page 1 of the handout we handed out, we offer a wide variety of courses, extracurricular activities, and sports. In addition, Sydney is going to be the first small school in Iowa to have the IJAG program starting this fall. The program provides high-quality dropout prevention and school-to-work transition services. The average course size at Sydney Community High School is around 15 students. These course sizes allow for collaboration among students and the teacher. The students are able to get individualized instruction and immediate feedback from face-to-face teachers. Classes in Sydney help support social and emotional learning, which include positive behavior interventions and supports. I want to be clear here about something. I am also the shared superintendent of one of the other small schools in Iowa. Okay? That is South Page, with a high school of only 20-ish students. Okay? To say that South Page presently doesn't meet offering teach is true, even when we share with Clarenda for part of the day. That is a fact. So from my experience, I don't see how Hamburg can meet offering teach stuff with 20-ish students in high school. An additional challenge of this offering teach is the course sizes. When you can find someone to teach and take the required class, some of South Page's courses only have 1 or 2 students in them. When you visit with those students, the comments you hear are, I sure miss collaboration, such as the opportunity to bounce ideas off of others or do some teamwork building. The state's focus on mental health is another important factor to consider. A very small high school has extra challenges when it comes to students' social and emotional issues. If a student does not get along with other students, they have very few options for friends. As educators, we need to do our best to protect them from the negative social and emotional situations. We feel that Hamburg students coming to Sydney helps alleviate that. Our comment is based on what is good for students. Every student deserves an excellent high school experience. We believe that Sydney is able to provide that and will continue for many, many years. Sydney looks forward to the improved facilities offered to our students and the recent passage of a $10 million bond issue. We are currently thriving both fiscally and academically. However, please see the following charts to show that by reopening a high school in Hamburg, what it will do to Sydney's fiscal stability, which in turn will hurt students' learning abilities. First, those of you who don't live in the school financial realm, I unfortunately do, okay? School districts in Iowa are held accountable to the state for their financial integrity by one primary measure, unspent authorized budget. According to this measure, that school districts all over the state use to measure and evaluate their relative general fund financial health. Allowing this measure to go negative can have severe consequences for a district, up to and including mandatory closure. That's what happens. Page 2 of your handout will show you where Sydney is right today on that. We highlighted the bottom of it for you. As you can see, we are very stable and growing slightly. Page 3 is basically a graph of that table. On page 4, one of the things that we've heard is that Hamburg would like to start a high school with 20-ish kids. So I had some people run some numbers for us. The people that are involved in this are considered some of the 3 quote-unquote experts in the state of Iowa. The School Board Association, Iowa School Finance and Information Services, and Forecast 5. That's the information you have in front of you. I did not put those together. I asked them to help me do that, okay? So on page 4, if we have 20 students leave out of the tuition agreement, why is that important? First of all, tuition in students are not included in the certified budget student count.
There's no budget guarantee on these students, and the enrollment revenue reduction occurs 1 year sooner. Okay? As you can see, we already start having red numbers in 2021. Okay? Page 5 is a graph of those 20 students leaving as well. On page 6, we have 37 tuition in kids. Okay? So I had them run some numbers with 37 kids. That's what that is there. As you can see, we decline very, very rapidly with our unspent authorized budget, to the point we begin becoming negative in 2025. Okay? On page 7 is the last one of that, and that is the same 37, which shows a possibility of going negative by 2023, but definitely by 2024. The reason this is unique to sparsely populated rural districts is the cost cannot be reduced in a proportional manner. In a larger district, factors such as retirements, turnover, can be used to shift or realign staff. In a smaller district, this is very difficult. Okay? On page 8 is actually the written narrative of how the dollars were put together on there for you. Okay? Okay. Thank you. As the board of directors, you are tasked with making a decision today to keep in mind that you are not only making a decision for students in Southwest Iowa, but students across the state. This is not about bringing a high school back after it's been gone for almost a decade. This is about raising student achievement through improved learning opportunities. A decision to allow Hamburg to reopen high school will not bring improved learning opportunities and will set precedents for other districts to find themselves in a similar situation. The feasibility study is clear in its conclusion that Hamburg cannot support a high school. Plus, to complicate the issue, the Army Corps of Engineers is saying it's going to be another grim spring for us in that area with flooding. After experiencing how things have gone with Hamburg students attending Sydney the past 4 years, we sincerely hope your decision today will allow our students to continue doing great things together. We hope that all the information provided is considered. My final statement is, please do not put both school districts in harm's way when you don't have to. Thank you.
So I know you'll want to get to questions, and I know that you've had time to read the report. So we're not going to go over everything that's in the report, and I don't want to respond to all of the comments that have been made so far. I do want to say just a couple of things. One is that on page 19, Dr. Wells pointed out a number of corrections that needed to be made to the sharing agreements. So where it says personnel sharing on page 19 of the department's study, we did take those from board minutes, but then discovered later that some of them are incorrect. And so what he said about some of those sharing arrangements are true. So it should not say that a PE teacher is shared with South Page. It should not say that a title and tag teacher is shared with South Page. So some of those things are incorrect and should be amended. If you want further clarification on that, and if you want a revised version of this, we're happy to provide it. That is the only error that we have that we need to correct.
Can I ask for a clarification on
Yes.
that? Are they sharing those with other districts?
No.
That it's just incorrect, or they're just not sharing
No,
at all?
we simply should not have had in there that a title and tag teacher are shared with South Page, or that an ag and PE teacher are shared with South Page, and a Spanish teacher is not shared with Sydney. And then the PE teacher is also not shared with South Page. So some of those things were incorrect, and Dr. Wells, feel free to correct me if I'm missing any of them, but some of those were simply wrong. We had taken them from board minutes, and some of them were just incorrect.
So the final 4 should be removed.
The final 4 should be either removed or amended.
The Spanish teacher is shared,
But not Sydney.
and it's 7/8, or 3/7, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so, bullet point 5, cross out APE. So a PE teacher is not shared.
What's wrong?
The next bullet point.
This report.
Mary Ellen, your mic is on. Do you have a question? If so, we'll have Amy finish and then turn to you. Okay, go ahead, Amy.
So a PE teacher is not shared with South Page. That's bullet point 5.
Okay, industrial arts is?
The industrial arts is.
Okay.
The next bullet can be completely crossed out. Title and tag teacher are not shared with South Page. The next bullet can be crossed out, and ag and PE teacher are not shared with South Page. And then the final bullet, you can just cross out Sydney. A Spanish teacher is shared with Red Oak, but not Sydney. And unfortunately, we caught these after it had already gone to press. And discovered that through conversations with the superintendent from Sydney. And then, as Dr. Wells mentioned today, we just had it from some board minutes and assumed that they were correct, but found it after we had already sent it to you. So, apologize for that error. As to the kind of the big picture of this, we did interview the AEA Chief Administrator, Dr. Lolly Hawes, and she is here today if you do have questions for her, and Dr. Hawes is in the back. And we did interview the neighboring superintendents. I believe that the directive that we got from the board at the last meeting in January was to do a study that would help you as board members understand the impact that this would have on Hamburg and on neighboring communities. So our intent is certainly not to pit districts against one another, but to help you understand what effect this would have on communities in Southwest Iowa. Unfortunately, a lot of times these decisions are not isolated, right? And they do affect neighboring communities. And so we did include those interviews. And we did ask those folks to go on record with their comments. I think that the other comment that I personally want to make is that I think big picture, I don't necessarily disagree with anything that Dr. Wells said about the report, so get a lot of specific points to make. What I would say is that the Department of Education, for our part, has a single goal, which has nothing to do with either large or small schools. It's simply making good decisions for kids. And unfortunately, for small schools, they do face declining enrollment in the state of Iowa, and it's a really tough decision sometimes about what to do in that situation. In Southwest Iowa, there's simply an area where a lot of schools are facing declining enrollment, and figuring out what to do about those sharing arrangements has been a long-standing issue, and that's what we were trying to illustrate with the that first table showing the history of feasibility studies and things that the AEA has done to try to shed some light on that. So hopefully we got that across, and if you have any specific questions, we'll be more than happy to answer them. I will see if either Tom or Janet has anything specific that they want to offer, or Eric is sitting behind us. We're a little crowded today. They all worked hard on this report, so.
Yeah, I'll speak just maybe a little bit on some of the challenges on the fiscal side with figuring out comparison data, trying to figure out potential for long-term viability of the high school. It's very difficult to figure out what would the cost really be of re-implementing a high school. So we have some methodology in there, as I'm sure you noticed on pages 24 and 25, based on our the best estimate that we could come up with was to look at other small schools that have high schools, do a comparison between expenditures that have been reported in the previous year. So that's the basis of coming up with an estimated cost for a high school. So as we get into that a little bit more, if you have questions, let me know. The other thing that was a challenge is that we were not working off a set of assumptions or financial details provided by the district in their previous report. So there was no way to go through and verify assumptions or verify a costing mechanism. So all of this is based, again, on our best ability to do estimates, given the data that we have available.
I'd just like to clarify my role. I'm the school improvement consultant that works with Green Hills AEA. So I have been at the department almost 10 years. And so I've been here for a lot of the things that have occurred and worked with the districts in the area. So if there's any, question about the kinds of services that have been provided, I was the person that provided those services.
Okay. Anything else?
Nope, we're here to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you.
First of all, I commend the young man over there for getting in front of a group of people and talking. That takes a lot of bravery, so I commend you for that. So, just a few things that I heard this morning. First off is I graduated from a high school of 36 in Wrightsville. Small community, small school district. I understand the struggles of small school districts. I have been either an educator, an administrator, or a legislator over the last 20 years. And during that time, and I believe Ryan even attended one of my meetings, is I had established a rural education task force as a legislator to look at rural school districts, to take a look at things. There's a few things that I've heard this morning that are very troublesome to me, having served in those roles and worn those hats. First off is, we heard that we chose not to come to Iowa because Iowa was closing their small schools. I can tell you in my time and in all my careers, I've never once had a conversation where anybody in the state of Iowa has said, we are going to work on an agenda to close our small schools. That is completely not true. I take offense to that. We are not. There is no hidden agenda. There is nobody that's having conversations behind the scenes that says, we want to close our small school districts. That to me is a troubling statement. The state has a big business push. Again, I have never seen that. I've been at all the different levels. I have never seen a push of big business, big school districts. I've not seen that. And I've been at the table for multiple conversations on this. Another thing that troubles me, the comment was made, well, the state has these silly requirements. Well, endorsements for people to be in front of our students, I don't see them as silly requirements. And until we get the state legislature to change things, the requirements that are in front of us are the requirements that we have to adhere to, plain and simple. And I understand the challenges of the offer and teach and things of that nature. But we as a board, it is our job to implement and to follow Iowa code. And until Iowa code is changed, I guess I don't see these as silly requirements. And until the legislators address that, or you work with your legislators, I don't see that as a productive statement. The last thing that really troubles me is I heard in some closing comments that, well, you guys might just get what you want. I take that as being addressed to us as a board that we want to see school districts close, that we want to see consolidation, that we want to see our small school districts fail. That couldn't be further from the truth. There isn't one time as a board member that I have sat here and had a conversation with my colleagues about how can we shut down small school districts. That has never happened, and it will never happen. I'm an advocate for small rural school districts. I understand the emotional side of this. There's a lot of emotion in this. I get it. I understand the argument. I also understand just viability. I understand, we've been dealing with diagonal school districts since I became a board member. We have been dealing with Davenport schools. We have been dealing with the same issues in this board since I got on, and my big fear is that this is not sustainable. You are either one or two retirements or resignations away from the plan that we saw last time not working. And then we're going to be back here at the board. We're going to be having all these discussions on what can we do to help you guys out. So I really, really worry about the sustainability of this. Nobody Nobody in the state of Iowa is having conversations about how we can shut down small school districts. The only thing that is driving that is population decline. At the end of the day, it comes down to population and having the students and the per pupil funding to make these things viable. And so I don't think some of these comments this morning were beneficial to this conversation. It really felt like we're being kind of targeted as trying to just shut down small schools. It's not the case, not at all. It's all about population, and unless you get the school funding formula changed, unless you can get the legislature to pass a law that says that we have to have necessarily small school districts, we have to do what we have to do as a board. Thank you.
Very well said, Josh. Good to hear you. Janet, I do have a question for you. So what actually is the role of the AEA in reorganization and feasibility studies? Because I think I heard that the AEA doesn't have any business in this discussion, and I wondered what actually the role is.
I'm gonna take that.
Okay.
That's okay with me.
Yeah.
So, chapter 275 of Iowa Code defines, and then we also have a district reorganization, dissolution, and sharing guide, that sort of gives, a little bit of life to that chapter, defines reorganization of school districts. The role of the AEA is to respond to requests for feasibility studies from districts. The department can do that as well, but it is first and foremost an AEA responsibility. And then to have on file with the department a reorganization plan that responds to any kind of requests that they have had, and is updated periodically. And the code doesn't define periodically. It's just to make sure that it is sort of currently relevant. And so in this case, if Green Hills knows that they have a couple of districts that are considering reorganization, they might want to update their reorganization plan. They can't force that on schools. Schools need to request that. The state board can't force the AEA or the schools to consider the reorganization, neither can we. But the AEA has kind of a foremost role in Chapter 275 for convening committees to sort of determine whether reorganization is a good idea. They can help hold joint board meetings. I have gone with Dr. Hawes to a joint board meeting before for a couple of the districts in their area who are considering reorganization. So it is something that they facilitate.
Okay. My other question, then just kind of a follow-up to that, is 30 years of studies, approximately, right?
Mm-hmm.
And as I read this, in many of those situations, it was Hamburg and Hamburg's community who chose not to follow the recommendations some of the other schools did. Am I correct in reading it that way?
I have read it that way. I do have to say that I wasn't here for all of that.
I was. Not on this board, but I understand that.
So in some cases, yes. I was here for the when Hamburg and Farragut voted, had a vote, and that did not pass, and that was partially due to Hamburg not getting the votes for them to merge. But I also can't say that that's unique to Hamburg and Farragut or to Hamburg as a community, because these conversations are extraordinarily difficult.
Oh, yeah.
And any conversation to share or merge is going to be difficult and sometimes takes many years. Maybe not 30, but it takes a long time.
Well, kind of a follow-up, and maybe this is historical, on page 7, the report says, well, it tells us that Hamburg went into the whole grade sharing with Farragut, which we know how that ended up. And you probably can't answer this because this is historical, but if Hamburg was willing to go into whole grade sharing with Farragut, to me it begs the question, why aren't they willing to do that with Sydney? And then when you look at, I think it's the 5th paragraph, it says, the certificate of need application, the district indicated that, quote, they hope to work toward a consolidation with Sydney. So I guess I'm asking what happened after maybe 2015 that this is not a direction that Hamburg currently wants to follow.
So I'll answer just one small piece, and then I think it's probably best answered by the superintendents respectively. My answer to the whole grade sharing and what happens is it takes two people. It takes two interested parties to enter into a whole grade sharing arrangement. And so if they don't have two interested parties and both districts aren't interested, it is not going to happen. And I think that we have multiple times when talking about this issue heard superintendents say we're interested in sharing, they're not interested in sharing one way or the other. And so it's probably best answered by the superintendents to tell us why they have not pursued consolidation.
I'd be happy to address it if that's okay. Just a couple of things. We have met with Sydney, and we're continuing to meet with Sydney. And whether we get a high school or not, we'll continue to have those conversations. For Hamburg, the issue is we want two-way whole grade sharing. Okay, we don't want to just send our kids to Sydney. We want the middle school in Hamburg, the high school in Sydney, and that's a tough conversation for them to have because of the position we're in. But I would say those conversations aren't over. And Mr. Hood made a good recommendation at our meeting on Monday night that the Iowa School Board come in and have that conversation and facilitate that sharing and those discussions. And we're happy to do that. And I don't think either board, it's just Hamburg doesn't want to give everything up. We want to be an equal partner. And if that can happen, I think that a consolidation could happen or a whole grade sharing arrangement could happen. But if it's one way, I think Hamburg would be very hesitant to do that.
Yes. Sure. So if you're sitting where Sydney is today, our kids basically go from pre-K to senior year and never have to leave the community. Okay? For the conversations that we are going to start looking at as a possible sixth grader now, those kids may have to leave the community. That's going to be an issue that is going to take some time to have with our community members. Okay? So therein lies, I believe, the biggest part of that. Is our kids have not had to leave Sydney their whole time, as where the two-way share will require those kids as 6th, 7th, and 8th graders to leave the community and be bused to.
And then maybe ask all of the people that are here today. I've heard great things about the K-8 system in Sydney, in Hamburg. Do you all realize that if you go with the high school and 3 or 4 years down the road it fails, then the whole system leaves Hamburg? To me, that's a great risk because I hear a lot of very good things about the K-8 system in Hamburg. And as our student so well stated, the education he received was very good. And does the community realize that if you take this gamble, you could lose it all, whereas you could continue with your K-8 system? It seems to me that's like having a community school, a neighborhood school, because you could send your children within the community up to 8th grade. Is that something that
So I got a question.
everyone's trying to, are you willing to assume that risk?
I got a question.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, you can, yeah.
so what you're saying is, if I want to put my house over to this lady over here and have no say to it, it's okay. This is what I hear is being said here. They're wanting things their way, and we got to bend over and let it happen. Why does that have to happen? Why can't this board make that happen, change?
I think it's important to know, so if, in the event that dissolution does, so I think it's important for the community to understand that, if we're, it's sustainability situation and maybe we have to dissolve the school district, then it goes away. Not only does it go away, but you guys don't have any choice in the matter of where your kids get to go, because the department can then step in and they merge with the solution of the school district. So you guys lose everything. Right?
We do understand that.
It's a big gamble, that's all we're saying. So we just think that you guys should.
But where's the gamble stopped? Where's this
Sorry,
gamble
there's
goes
no
on?
comments unless the board president acknowledges the comment. Okay.
Alright.
Yours.
So, do people have any other questions? Sure.
I haven't.
Go ahead.
Betty?
I already asked a couple.
All right, Mike.
Let Betty.
All right. I really am concerned about class size. And I cannot believe that 1 or 2 students in a class is optimal. I tried to do a little research on what is kind of optimal class size according to the research. And I found a couple of studies 2 studies is really all I really looked at in depth, that we're saying 13 to 15 students is optimal. Do you as a department have any information on that? Because to me, that's the huge question for your students.
So,
What does the research show?
interestingly, the research on class size is all about not making it too
Too
big.
big, yes, I know.
Not about
I found
making it
plenty
too
of that.
small.
Yeah.
When you get into small group sizes, it's all about how small should you have a group for providing good interventions.
Yeah.
And so I actually don't know of strong class size research that's about how small a class could be. I'm looking at Dave to see if he knows of any, but all of the class size research I know of is about how large you can
Yeah,
push
that
class
was most
sizes,
of
right?
the research I
And
found
most
too.
of that is about really a large class size not having a predictive value on how well kids will do. Now, it has a lot of meaning though to parents and kids and how much face time they're getting with their teacher. So that's important. I don't know of anything that's about how small. Now, certainly small group sizes can be important for providing interventions. There's a social emotional piece, but I don't know of any of that research off the top of my head. David?
The only thing the only thing I'd add is the research on the smallness of instructional groups typically is related to educational outcomes, so like learning to read or learning mathematics or learning, and so basically what it says is they're usually looking at how big of a group can we get and still get the effects with a group of kids. So that's really all that the research says there. So and wouldn't add a lot to what Amy says, except for that the smaller groups, depending on the type of class that you're in, many of the classes that we're teaching now, we're teaching skills beyond just the basics. And so there are things like collaboration, there are things like social emotional learning, there are interactions with other kids. The fewer kids you have, the fewer opportunities that provides to that group. But in terms of, the small, you typically, you can get the same instructional outcomes with smaller groups, but some of the associated benefits you don't get unless you have a large group.
But you're still saying group, and to me that's more than 2. But maybe that's just semantics, I don't know.
Dr. Walls?
A couple things. The class sizes in Hamburg range from 20 kids. We're anticipating not getting students back from Sydney. That's why the small numbers. But our classes are 15 to 20 students. We do have a class of 11. So that the high school is probably eventually going to be about 60 students. And secondly, I think his comments about the things I said, I want to apologize for those. I think those were kind of inappropriate, and I stand corrected on them. So thank you.
A few things. I did do a site visit at Hamburg on Tuesday, and that was very well received. It was not a dog and pony show for Mike. It was kids in action. They did, normally this makers space normally is on Friday, and Friday didn't work, so I was there on Tuesday. And And so they did flip the schedule and they did makerspace on Tuesday. So I got to see it in full action. Started the day in the industrial arts room, and Dr. Wells was helping kids make a house. They're building a house, and the community's gonna put together this house for one of the people in this. And then a couple students in there in the front row, they gave me a tour of all the different pieces of that system.
And these are K-8 students?
This is K-8. And so we went to, I don't know, there's probably 8 or 10 or 12 rooms, I don't remember. There was quilting, and there was t-shirts, and there was pottery, and I mean, all different things. And we saw the kids in action. 8. Most of them had a K-8 variety of students. And you could see that the older kids were helping the younger kids. It was awesome. It was very awesome. Got to see the farm. We saw the new goats and the new sheep. That was pretty, I got a picture of that. That was pretty cool. Kind of what Mike said and what Brooke said, that K-8 system is awesome. It's on a 100-point scale, that's a 99, and I'm not sure where you lose the 1 point. It's awesome. But my fear is exactly what was said. If you go ahead to a high school, in 2 to 3 to 4 years, you're financially in trouble, and it comes back to us and we are on a different accreditation, and then we have to do what we end up having to do with Farragut. That wasn't much fun at this table. And that scares me. So that's struggling. And I've asked if we can go to a semi-accredited high school, and in 2 years if it doesn't work, we can pull that back. And the answer, I believe, is no, we can't. So it's all in or all out. So I'm scared to death about going all in, and then you are all out. The other thing is, from my perspective, I served on a school board for 20 years at the Gladbrook-Rhinebeck district. Gladbrook-Rhinebeck started as 2 districts, struggling with declining enrollment to the point where they had to do something. And so they shared for 5 years, and the students got along very, very well. The parents tolerated each other. One district wanted to consolidate, the other district said no. So we shared for another 5 years, so we shared for 10 years. Again, the students were fine, the parents tolerated each other, the communities tolerated each other. We came to a vote, first vote, it passed in one community and failed in the other. We brought it back to another one, and I was on the board at this time. We brought it back to the communities and it passed. And so Gladbrook-Rhinebeck shared for 10 years and then consolidated. The parents still get along, or the kids still get along fine. Parents and communities are the same as they were. You're never gonna get a love fest with Hamburg and Sydney. But I think you both need each other. And I think you need to consider full grade sharing. And I agree with what Mike says. It needs to be two-way. That's a tough decision. But at least there needs to be a joint board. And that's what we had at Gladbrook-Rhinebeck. We had a joint board for those 10 years. That the decisions that were happening were discussed at the joint board meeting. Then the boards had to do their action because they each had control of whatever. But there was at least discussion at the table. I think that would be a good move. Now, I think the situation is just about the mirror of what I just described. I mean, your communities have strong feelings. The Gladbrook and Rhinebeck communities right now like each other less than they did. And I'll just leave it at that. It's never gonna be my kids went through it all. They had great friends. I've got some good friends at Rhinebeck. Haven't talked to them in years. That's just reality. So I'm scared to death of giving you they all in and ended up with nothing. So, I don't know where I'm gonna land, but that's my perspective from seeing your school and bringing my experience from another situation that's very simple. I also went to diagonal too, but that's another day.
Okay, so I have a question.
This is Mary Ellen, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
We can hear you, Mary Ellen. You're up.
Thank you. I just have a totally unrelated question. On page 24, there is a chart that is net taxable valuation, and I am more than a bit curious as to how, in a 5-year span, Hamburg's taxable valuation increased over 35 million. So what changed in that 5-year time span? I don't see farmland values rising that hard, fast in that area. So where did that 35 million come from?
I don't have that sheet, but I wonder if it isn't with the Farragut dissolution.
Dissolution.
Was it the dissolution we received more property
Yeah,
maybe?
yeah.
But it
That's
shouldn't be
kind
that much.
Yeah.
So additional land was.
It's every 2 years, I believe, you know, you have reassessments that
could
occur,
go up
but
a lot.
not that much, yeah.
It could
But a
go
lot of it's, I think, as Mike said, the additional property, I'd have to dig into that a little more.
Good point, Mary Ellen. Yep.
Tom, I have a question.
So I wasn't clear on the answer from Tom.
Yeah. I said, Mary Ellen, it's likely, you know, the biggest jump is likely due to the additional territory that was added to the district as a result of the Farragut dissolution.
Ah, okay. Thank you.
So I saw in here, the estimate of, kind of what they're spending now in Hamburg, and then what if they would be maybe spending if they added a high school based on other small high schools.
Right.
So I'm wondering, are there kind of like startup costs, like putting together a high school? Not to put you on the spot, like how much would that be? I didn't know if like there were.
Yeah, and you've hit on a lot of the things that we struggled with, and trying to do a feasibility for adding just certain grade levels, which is something that we don't have a model or anything to pull back on. So would there be startup costs? I would say yes, there would be. In this case, having had a high school before, there may be some of those costs that a district that was just opening a brand new building, for example, like we had in Iowa City, you know, where they added a high school, Ankeny, who has added a second high school. Those are a little bit different situations, right? And this is one of the things that we tried to point out. So I want to take you back to page 18. And although I think this was read as simply a list of board policies that would need to be addressed, you know, from a high school standpoint, it's really much more than that. It's not just a matter of putting a board policy together, it's implementing the programs that are underneath those board policies. So as a lot of the conversation has evolved, we've talked about offer and teach, you know, addressing courses. That's only one piece of a high school program. That just, you know, it gives your place for students to enroll and hopefully have enough peers in the class to be conducive to great learning. But there's all sorts of other things that we struggled with seeing on how these would be addressed. Anything that's a K-12 program that's been done K-8, you now have to expand. So you're talking K-12 counseling program, K-12 at-risk programs, gifted and talented programs. All of those things to add additional levels will likely include some type of additional cost. either through, additional staffing, reassignment of staff, materials. Those are all things that also come into play. So when you're reconstituting a high school, you only hone on materials for a while. You now have to have instructional materials for grades 9 through 12. That's an additional cost. If you're talking additional technologies, student access to programming, all of those things, don't just appear, right? So that's some of the things that we struggled with. I'm going to tell you from a fiscal standpoint, the three of us who worked on this, pretty solidly. Two of us are former high school principals, both from small schools. Two were former superintendents. So we took this approach very seriously to try to capture, thinking back on our experience, what did we have to have, in order to provide the experiences that the students need. And, so that's why I wanted to make sure to point out that this is more than just policies. It's really putting things into practice.
I went through chapter 12, every page of chapter 12, and looked at what impacted high school programs. And so this is all out of chapter 12. The other thing I'd say too, as far as costs, you have to consider the staff costs. And they will have to have another administrator because of having a high school. And the way it stands now, they have one administrator that, because they're operating at K-8, they can have one administrator be the superintendent and principal. That won't be the case if they're operating K-12.
I'm going to ask a question on the online course offerings. So, and maybe Ryan can help with this. So, if we approved a high school here, then they would have, Hamburg would have to get a waiver to teach some of these classes online. Is that beyond 2, right?
Yeah, the current law, lets you have, 2 sort of, they're yours to have, you just need to let us know that's how you're doing them, so that when we do our course review every year, we know. And then if you wanna go beyond that, you have to ask for a waiver.
So how far beyond can you go? Is there a limit? And in your experience, how many of these waivers have you granted? So the broad question is, if we approve the high school and the waivers aren't granted, then what happens?
So it's a new law, and the waivers actually do come through us. And so, the answer is that we've never had to grant any of those waivers because no one's gone beyond 2 courses yet, to teach online. Now, I presume that with declining enrollment in rural schools, we're going to have people, applying for the waivers to have more online courses. That was the purpose of the legislation. But we haven't had that happen, and there is no limit in the code for how many waivers you can ask for. At some point, we have to come to a decision as a department on where the line is between you're operating really an online program at this point, and you should be applying to operate an online program and not for 7 waivers, you know what I mean? And so, because there's an application process to run an online school too. And so at what point do we steer you towards another application?
Thank you.
Does anyone have any other questions?
Can I make a comment?
Yeah, go ahead, Marianne.
I think everyone on this board knows that I am a strong advocate for rural schools. I live in one of the least populated counties in the state, Wayne County. If you're familiar with this location, some of you know what we call locally the Lineville effect. I appreciate the emotion that communities have around their schools. I appreciate the value that these schools are to maintain a community. In Lineville, that emotion led to the community supporting the building of a new high school that is now empty and the taxpayers are still paying for it because they did not have enough students to sustain that. I love rural schools. I love the passion that the Hamburg community has brought to this. I supported this when they came a year ago because I really felt the community understood the risk, but now I'm not so sure they do. Because what I'm hearing from all of this data is financially, I just don't see this being viable. And so you're putting at risk a school you already have, that you have enough students to support, that the community supports, and you're putting that at huge risk. This is not an easy decision for all of us, and certainly not for me, one who really understands and values these rural schools. But I have to also be realistic when I look at the map. And you're talking about a distance of 8 miles, not 20 miles or 30 miles. You're not talking about a real issue about transporting students that other rural areas do face. The 8 miles to me just doesn't make much sense. We can't afford to have high schools every 8 miles. So that's the reality that I see in this data.
Thanks, Mary Ellen. Do Kim or Mike May have any comments or questions?
I agree with Mary Ellen. Thanks so much for the department for conducting the feasibility study. Thanks so much for both the comments and all the emails that we've received. But I do have more information now I felt a little bit more comfortable making decisions than I did our prior meeting.
Thank you, Kimberly. Mike May, do you have any comments or questions?
Just a couple.
Mike May? Mike?
Bye.
Can you hear me?
Do we know if Mike's on?
I don't see Mike, but I don't know what his phone number is.
Is it 712? Please, yes, 712.
Mike, can you talk now?
He's on. Mike? His number is on, and it looks like, Mike, it looks like you're trying to talk, but we're not hearing you over our speakers. Can you check to see if you're muted? And we're checking on our end too. You shouldn't be muted.
I thought he was talking. I'm wondering if he just needs to speak up a little bit more if he can.
Mike May, are you there? Mike, could you see if your handset is? Yes.
Can you hear me now?
We can.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know what happened, but anyway, yeah. Let me make a few comments, and I think most of what I'll say has already been said. And first of all, it's a good lesson to listen to my colleagues a little more carefully. I think a lot of wisdom has been shared in the room today by both sides of this issue, and I think I really appreciate the work that the department did in preparing this statement, and I really appreciate the work that Dr. Wells and your group has done as well. We are passionate about education. That's why we serve on this board. I'm 74. I apologize for not being with you today. I have a certain amount of time I can take a vacation on, and that's what I'm doing right now. But we care a heck of a lot about kids, and that's why we serve. And again, let me compliment the board for the comments that they've made. Let me compliment the Department of Ed for the hard work that you've done in this. I know you love kids, and you're doing the best for them. I know that Josh probably speaks for me the most as being a former legislator. I understand how we've struggled with this issue of small schools forever and ever, and all we seem to do is nibble at the edges. We don't seem to be able to solve the problem, and I would guess that that's probably going to be a problem we're going to be dealing with for years. I would hope that someone comes up with a good model, but understand too, Hamburg, that we are restricted. We are contained by what the legislature has done. And it is our job to implement what the legislators have done in their work. So to the extent that we can help you or can direct you, we are confined by those laws that have been made. And we have, again, Josh, as I have struggled to try to do things that would be helpful to rural small schools in Iowa. My concern here is what has been expressed. I'm very much concerned about the viability of your plan, I think financially and instructionally. This will be a problem in succeeding years. And I think that if we do this now, as others have suggested, and end up in a situation where we have to dissolve the district, you're going to be very unhappy. But looking at instruction, how difficult it is to hire good instructors in the state, we have shortages in almost every area now. It used to be just math, science, some of those areas of special education, but now we have shortages in lots of areas. And it's going to be very difficult for you to find instructors. The dollar is going to become an issue as well, I think, as Tom has expressed and others have expressed. So I don't have a lot to add to the discussion. I just want you to know that I have the same passion for education that many of you do. Dr. Wells, I can hear in your voice the passion you have for your community and for your district, and I have empathy for that because I graduated like Josh from a small high school. I had 16 in my graduating class, and you know what? They did a great job, I think. Well, some people might argue with that, but they did a great job in leading that. And again, I don't have more to say except that thanks to everybody for the input you've given us today on this decision. I know everybody is extremely thoughtful and careful in their comments. And Dr. Wells, as you made the comments that Josh reacted to, I probably could have been Josh as well. That kind of hurts a little bit, but I know that you're passionate about it. I know that you care a lot about your kids, and I know that's where it came from your heart, and you weren't trying to offend anyone. But thank you guys, and thank you for all the information. I think that makes my decision easier.
Thank you, Mike. Does anyone have any other questions or comments?
You know, I just have one short comment maybe that I heard one of our speakers say, it might have been the city councilman whose name I can't remember, I'm sorry, but that saving our school will help build our town or help economic development. We're not taking anything away. I hope the community understands that. We're not taking anything away. You haven't had it for 10 years. We're not taking anything away. We're really actually trying to help you save what you do have, I think. And I guess I felt like maybe that's been missed. I know you brought it up, but I just want to make sure that the community understands we aren't taking anything away.
That's a good point to make. Yeah, and, you know, last meeting I said that I thought that you guys I love what you guys are doing, and I'm really happy that Mike went to go visit and to hear what an amazing job you guys are doing with K through 8. I think it's phenomenal, and like I said before, I think that this is, you know, something that other rural schools should look at, because I just think it's, you know, you're obviously doing something right. You're meeting the needs of your students, and obviously they're very passionate and happy, and I can hear the passion, and I love what you're doing, but maybe you guys are willing to gamble and risk losing everything on a high school, but I don't know if we are. And so, you know, to save what you guys have, maybe this is the right decision. I'm not sure. But I think that also, you know, I hope that you guys continue to talk to Sydney, because it looks like that might be the way of the future. And whether it takes you 5 or 10 years to get there, I'm hoping that you get there to save everyone.
Are you ready for a motion?
I am.
Sorry, I just want to quickly add, you know, regardless of the decision that ends up being made, I just wanted to thank all of the parents and all the students that made the effort to come here today, because I know obviously it's a long drive, and it's really great to see that kind of passion that all the community members have, you know, toward this initiative. So, you know, regardless of what ends up happening, it's really refreshing and really nice to see all of you having this much interest and stake in your community.
All right.
I would move that we allow Hamburg to proceed with the high school.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Should we do
Discussion.
any
If
discussion?
there's further discussion.
All right, no further discussion. Should we do
Yeah, you could do a roll call vote.
No.
Mike Bearden,
No.
Betty,
No.
Josh,
No.
Angela,
No.
Mike Nedler,
No.
Mike May,
No.
Mary Ellen,
No.
Kimberly? Kimberly?
No.
Motion.
No.
We got you, Kim. Okay.
Right, the motion fails. All right. Is that the-
Adjournment.